Good day. Thank you for having me as a speaker at Next Rise 2020. Last year I was here in Seoul and it was such a wonderful experience to participate, meet with speakers, meet with other exhibitors and to learn so much more about the local ecosystem. Of course, this year one misses the networking and the discussions, but I'm so glad that I can share my perspective and I hope to more online meets as has been scheduled. A lot has happened in the last few months. Opportunities which were there have gone and newer opportunities have come. So today my session is about the emerging growth opportunities in India. At the end of the session, I will share my email ID. If you need to know anything more, feel free to reach out and I would be glad to respond and to help you. When we talk of India, we are looking at a very large country with a very large population. In the next slide, I'm going to share with you a few data points that should interest you and hopefully something that you can use in your business plans. Let me share the demographics of India with you. We have a total population of about 1.36 billion people, where urbanization is about 34%, which means an opportunity just not in the urban areas, but also about 66% in the rural areas. We have a mobile penetration of 87%, which means 1.19 people have access to mobiles. They use applications not just in English, but also in the regional languages. We have 560 million internet users. That is a penetration of 41%. Active social media users are about 310 million people, and we have mobile social media users of 290 million, which means people who have their mobiles and are using them for accessing data, applications, banking transactions are at 290 million people. But look at the potential to expand in this area. Study these data and numbers. Do not look at India as one homogeneous mass. We are fragmented, we are divided by state, by languages, by economic background. So be very clear on your India strategy. Sometimes companies who do B2C in other geographies often look at a B2B model in India. So be very clear on your model before entering India. Do your studies well in advance, do some test marketing, and then look at being in India for the long term. Plan for at least 1 year. Less than that will not really help you succeed. So now we have the COVID-19, which is something that has impacted everybody's lives, professionally and personally. Due to COVID-19 and the lockdown situation, in fact, in India, we have had lockdown 1, 2, and 3, but people are continuing to work from home in the bulk of the larger industries. There is social distancing, both in the workplace and on the personal front. So this creates opportunities for the use of technologies and for remote delivery and access. Certain areas like the delivery of groceries and food and digital technologies have seen an absolute boom. Initially, there was a big shortage, but luckily companies in this space have risen up to the demand, and today these are not problem areas for the typical consumer. But to focus on this talk, let us look at two of the fastest growing sectors with maximum impact in India. One, healthcare, which includes health tech, and second, edtech. In fact, it is being said this is the golden decade of edtech in India. Let's move in the coming slides to each of these verticals and see how they can be addressed. India's healthcare market will be 372 billion US dollars by 2022. Given the COVID-19 situation, areas where we see growing demand are disease control using analytics, diagnostics using artificial intelligence, telemedicine, especially due to COVID-19. Here it's worth remembering that telemedicine is legal in India and a fast emerging segment, having seen a 20% compounded annual growth rate during 2016 to 2020. I think now a lot of people are referring to their doctors via Zoom and other such facilities, so that second visits or follow-ups do not mean that they have to go physically to the hospital. Last but not the least are use of devices. And I think Korean companies are especially good on this. I worked with two Korean companies who have done their clinical validations in India. And these devices are easy to use, can address the bottom of the pyramid and address scalable models. So keep this in mind that India also has the world's largest government-funded health scheme called Ayushman Bharat with 121 million health cards issued as of Feb 2020. This addresses bottom of the pyramid, so it's going to be more about volumes rather than pure revenues. So this is one more important point that you need to keep in mind when you come to India. Focus on India if you're looking at numbers. If you're looking at high margin businesses, revisit your model. Important factors for startups wanting to enter the India market are get customer and clinical validation, either in your country or in our country, get paid proof of concept. India follows FDA and CE standards, so having these would help entry into India. In this slide, I want to give you examples of upcoming health tech startups in India. So you get an idea of what is happening, what is on the ground, and whether it makes sense to your focus areas. Look at number one company, 1mg. It's an online pharmacy which has raised a funding of 70 million US dollars. Two of its biggest investors have been South Korea's Redwood Global and Korea Omega Healthcare Fund. PharmEasy is India's largest healthcare delivery platform. It has raised a funding of 100 million US dollars. Companies, I want to give the example here of two companies that have used technology such as deep learning, cloud, and have grown. For example, look at CureEye, which builds deep learning solutions that help physicians with routine diagnosis and treatment. They have raised monies of about 16 million. Look at Tricog Health, which has developed cloud-connected ECG systems to help doctors detect heart complications within minutes of a patient's arrival. Their funding has been about 17.5 million. Any woman who has undergone a mammogram understands the difficulties and the awkwardness of these tests. Sometimes people delay the mammogram test because it is so very inconvenient. So Nirama is a company that uses machine learning and AI for breast examinations. They use a low-cost portable device that can be set up in a very small space, which takes high-resolution thermal images as an alternate to traditional mammogram. It is founded by two women. The funding they have raised is about 7.5 million. Elucidata is yet another company. It builds algorithms and software to process, analyze, and visualize large omics data across metabolomics, genomics, etc. It's a young company and has raised a funding of 1.7 million US dollars. This is not an exhaustive list. I just pulled up examples of companies across technologies, across various areas of the healthcare, health tech system. So you get an indication of what's happening and whether any of this excites you, because technology is perhaps the only way to address the masses and the population of India and find solutions that work. Now from healthcare, let us move to the other area, EdTech. EdTech has made it difficult, if not impossible, for students to go to classes, to take the examinations in the existing physical form. But education can't stop. Children have to get through their classes, they have to move on in life. So what is the solution? And I think EdTech perhaps is offering the biggest solutions for our young people. Not just our young people, also people wanting to move forward in their career. So look at online education market in India. It is set to grow to 1.96 billion and have around 9.6 million users by 2021. What is the largest segment over here? It is the K-12, which is the kindergarten to high school, that is standard 12, that forms about 39% of the users. Test prep, that is preparing for the school leaving, high school leaving, as competitive exams like the MBA entrance, government jobs, civil services forms another 26%. Catching up very fast is skill development certification. People understand that new areas like AI, data sciences, data analytics mean upskilling and improvement of job opportunities. So it's now at about 23.6%. Higher education is comparatively lower at 9.4% and language and casual learning at about 1.5%. In a 5-year period from 2012 to 2017, the growth in Indian consumer spend on education has been about 6.3%. I think now with the COVID-19 and the post scenario, we should see these numbers and percentages go up. What are the important factors that companies in this space are keeping in mind? First is tutoring. Second is social and peer learning. If students have to take the exams online and you have to make sure that the right student is taking the right test, proctor testing makes a big difference. It is like your computer, video, camera is monitoring you, so there is nothing incorrect that would happen over there. So proctor testing is a really fast growing hot area, so as to speak. Certifications are important, especially in the skill development and upskilling space. If we are going to deliver so much of education and learning online, outcomes have to be measured. So measuring outcomes too is very important. So what are the opportunities for Korean companies out here? First thing is online learning platforms and LMS. Today, schools and colleges are looking at effective web learning and how to address a large classroom of students. Zoom has made major inroads into India, especially into school learning. LMS platforms have also become important for uploading curriculum for students to download and learn. Students are learning not just on desktops, laptops, but also on the mobile devices. Another area of opportunity is AI-driven customized learning solutions, video-based learning, and an area in which Korean companies are particularly strong are AR/VR technologies. This is estimated to become a 5.3 billion US dollar industry by 2023. So I think this slide is important. Have a look at it, see where you fit in, or whether you have to tweak some of your existing model to grow on these lines in the new geography. So out here, I wanted to share with you some of the funding raised by startups in India. This is not an exhaustive list. There are far more companies, but I've tried to take a cross section across different areas. We have to look at Byju's, which is now valued as the most valuable edtech company in the world. It has raised foundation from Disney, from the Facebook Foundation, and that's to the tune of 785 million US dollars. The learning app is for mid-school and high school students to take their competitive exams, and with the lockdown, this number is just growing. They're looking at not just at India, but expanding where the Indian diaspora is across Middle East and other parts of the world. There are two companies out here who are in the competitive exam space, preparing people for testing and getting in further in their careers. This is Topper, which has raised 44 million, and Unacademy, which has raised 110 million US dollars. Vedantu is live online tutoring by teachers to school students. They have raised considerable amount of money, 85 million, and because of the online model, there are no more boundaries for teaching. So your teacher could be sitting in one city, you could be in another part of the world and getting tutored in a subject to do better and to address your weaknesses. QMath, as the name itself stands for, is for coaching in mathematics. Indians are very particular about getting good marks in math because it is the key to all higher education degrees that give you good jobs. So QMath has raised about 25 million US dollars and mainly addresses school students. It is now looking at providing coaching in coding too. Camp K-12, as the name signifies, is for kindergarten to high school students, standard 12, and teaches them coding skills, and which will help them prepare them for jobs in industry and for getting into engineering and related programs. It has raised about 4 million and is present in 10 countries across the world. This is all technology. Look at these companies. They are indicative, but go and study deeper into what are the kinds of each one of these companies have competitors. So go and look at it further and see where are the gaps. Is there scope for collaboration or taking your efforts and your model and addressing India's vast young population? So if you're looking at doing business in India, it's a different country, different culture. And in this slide and the next, I want to share with you certain points that could help you move forward. Very important right up front is to find the correct decision maker. Decisions are typically made by senior management whose presence is needed at the meetings to close the deal. So don't wait too long. If you find that the decision maker is not there in the first or second meeting, make sure he gets in early enough or you will spend too much time briefing people who cannot take a call. Also, instead of stating, for example, you are going to be there on so and so date at so and so time, ask what is convenient to your Indian partner or customer and then schedule it accordingly. Meetings may not always start in time. They might start with a lot of informality and topics about your journey, your family, your interests, maybe the first 5 or 10 minutes before the formal business discussion begins. Also, as far as gifts go, give them with both hands if you have to give a gift. and they're not typically open when you are there. They'll be open at a later time. So these are normal practices and more akin to the country, but of course there are exceptions at every point of time. Three other areas which you should be aware of. I think Koreans are so very particular on the timing. In fact, when we do webinars with Korea and with other countries in the Far East like Singapore and Japan, people are there 5 minutes before the session begins. In India, in some places, timings tend to be flexible, but don't take it amiss. It doesn't mean that they're not interested. Meetings could get interrupted. Person might take a cell phone call, but it does not mean that they're not serious. So these are cultural blips. Absorb it and move on. Meetings can also get postponed, but that's all part of it, this whole story. Follow up. What is the best way to follow up? It is through email, WhatsApp, and through a direct call. All three could be common. You don't have to wait for one to go on to the next. MOU documents are given lesser importance in India as compared to South Korea. Communication, most Indians will avoid telling you no. But if you hear answers which say, we will see or I will try, then you have to take a different approach because what they're telling you is this model will not work. So, that's very important that it has to be addressed. Bring also matters of business and finance early into the discussion. If you don't, the other party is unlikely to do so, and you should not waste your time going around something which may not fructify. So just to summarize our discussion so far, India is a big market. Technology is the way to make progress over there and scale up very rapidly. The current COVID-19 scenario has created a lot of opportunities for technical collaboration. We have looked at healthcare and edtech as two areas where a lot of prospects for collaboration and growth exist. Also, ways to do business, some guidelines. Of course, having a local partner or someone who can take you through the route out there will make a big difference. But I think you should not ignore it. Start the relationship early enough so you have a few months of online webinars or Zoom calls, discussions, so that when you actually come to the country, you already have an existing relationship. I hope it has been useful for me, for you, and for all of us. So please don't hesitate to reach out to the organizers at KITA or to me. I would be only too glad to help you. Thank you so much for your time. Best wishes for NextRise 2021, and I hope I can see you there next year too. My ID is purnima_shenoy@yahoo.com, at Hummingbird Advisors. I look forward to your success in my country. Thank you.